It's been years since Richie Sambora walked away from Bon Jovi, leaving fans buzzing with questions about what really happened behind the scenes. Now, Richie is finally breaking his silence, and the stories he shares are raw, candid, and downright eye-opening. From private clashes with Jon over musical directions to the relentless pressure of fame, he's lifting the curtain on a side of the band we've never seen before. So, what really went down between Jon and Richie Sambora? Join us as we pull back the curtains. The rise of Richie Sambora. Before the world saw Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi as a duo at the peak of rock royalty, they were just two kids with big dreams trying to make it out of New Jersey. Richie Sambora, born Richard Stephen Sambora on July 11, 1959, in Perth Amboy, grew up in a working-class household. His mom Joan was a secretary, and his dad Adam a factory foreman. Raised Catholic and of Polish descent, Richie spent his formative years in Woodbridge Township, where he graduated from Woodbridge High School in 1977. He wasn't just about music, the kid could ball. His sophomore basketball team even snagged the 1975 Group 4 state title. Music, however, was always calling. Richie started on the accordion at 6, but the guitar stole his heart when he was 12, inspired by the death of Jimi Hendrix in 1970. From that moment, he immersed himself in blues and 1960s rock and roll. The list of people who shaped his sound reads like a rock hall of fame. Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Page, Joe Perry, Brian May, George Harrison, B.B. King, and even the raw soul of Janis Joplin. Spanish classical music also left its mark, fueling a lifelong love for the Spanish guitar. And he even drew inspiration from classical piano for songs like The Answer. Richie wasn't just a guitarist. He played drums, bass, saxophone, piano, you name it. His first stage performance came at a Catholic youth organization dance as a teenager, a humble start for someone destined for stadiums full of screaming fans. He cut his teeth in bands like Message, releasing an independent record called Lessons in 1982, which later saw multiple re-releases. Mercy, Duke Williams and the Extremes, and even a club project called Richie Sambora and Friends kept him busy. He even dabbled in the business side, part-owning a New Jersey club and launching his own label, Dream Disc Records, at just 19. Richie's professional touring career kicked off as an opening act for Joe Cocker in the early 1980s. And before he became the face of Bon Jovi's guitar, he nearly became the face of Kiss, auditioning to replace Ace Frehley. That didn't pan out, but fate had bigger stages waiting. It was only a matter of time before Richie Sambora's path collided with Jon Bon Jovi, setting the stage for one of rock's most electric and complicated partnerships. Bon Jovi and Sambora, a band like no other. Richie Sambora's journey with Bon Jovi officially began in 1983, a move that would change the trajectory of rock history. He stepped in to replace the band's original lead guitarist, Dave Sabo, who would go on to form Skid Row. At the time, Alec John Such, already a friend of Richie's and a bandmate in previous projects, had joined Bon Jovi while Richie was in Los Angeles auditioning for Kiss. When Richie returned to New Jersey, Such wasted no time and invited him to catch a Bon Jovi show. What he witnessed that night left an impression that would shape his career. The energy on stage, the chemistry between the band members, and Jon Bon Jovi's presence struck Richie as nothing short of magic. Backstage, he introduced himself to Jon and delivered what he called a verbal resume, laying out his skills, his influences, and his vision. At first, he thought Jon wasn't particularly interested, but a few days later, a phone call came through inviting him to rehearse with the band. That session was electric. Jon walked in, listened to Richie play, and without hesitation, hired him on the spot. That same night, in a burst of creativity fueled by adrenaline and newfound camaraderie, Richie and Jon returned to Bon Jovi's mother's house and wrote 2 songs that would appear on the band's debut album, Come Back and Burning for Love. It was a moment that cemented their partnership, at least on the surface, a union that would give birth to some of rock's most iconic anthems. Fast forward to the 1989 MTV Video Music Awards, and Richie and Jon found themselves stripping down stadium-sized hits like Livin' on a Prayer and Wanted Dead or Alive into intimate acoustic performances. Their stripped-down take didn't just impress fans, it caught the attention of MTV producers. Initially, MTV Unplugged had been envisioned as a platform for young, up-and-coming artists. Richie and Jon's performance, however, shifted the show's trajectory, showing that even massive arena-filling acts could captivate audiences in a raw, acoustic setting. Their creative partnership didn't stop there. Songs like Next 100 Years from the album Crush showcased the duo's ability to bridge cultures and emotions. The song, co-written by Richie and Jon, was first adapted in Japanese by Bees' Koshi Inaba and performed by Johnny and Associates Special Unit J Friends to support relief efforts after the 1995 Great Hanshin earthquake. Later, a live version made its way onto the 2003 DVD J Friends Never Ending Spirit, 1997 to 2003, capturing the spirit of collaboration and cross-cultural artistry that Richie and Jon had come to embody. It was more than music, it was proof to the reach and impact of their partnership. From that first backstage handshake to influencing international relief efforts through their songs, Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi were creating ripples far beyond the stages they played on. But as history would show, the story behind the music was not always as harmonious as the melodies they crafted. Jon Bon Jovi, frontman or rival? The relationship between Jon Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora was always a fascinating dance, one that fans watched unfold with curiosity and, sometimes, unease. On stage, Jon was the face, the frontman, and the voice that defined the band. His charisma and media presence naturally placed him in the spotlight, the quarterback calling the plays. Richie Sambora, though, was no ordinary sidekick. He was the ace guitarist and the co-architect of Bon Jovi's anthems. And yet, over time, the dynamic between them began to shift in ways that would eventually strain the partnership. Jon himself acknowledged the band's structure in a 2007 interview, likening it to a football team. He saw himself as the quarterback, leading the charge, with Richie as a vital player executing the strategy. But even in that analogy, the subtle tension was there. Football teams need all their players in sync, but they also carry hierarchies, and Richie sometimes felt the weight of that imbalance. Richie's perspective tells a story of quiet frustration. During an appearance on the Magnificent Others podcast, hosted by Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins, Richie reflected candidly on the final chapter of his time with Bon Jovi. He revealed that as he and Jon reconnected to work on the band's next album, after his 2012 solo tour, supporting Aftermath of the Lowdown, he sensed something had shifted. What had once been a collaborative songwriting powerhouse now felt different. I felt like Jon was changing his focus, and he often wanted to be a solo artist, Richie admitted. And I go make a solo album. He was definitely changing directions. Sambora had assumed that he and Jon would pick up where they had left off, crafting the songs that would become the band's signature hits. But when he heard Jon had written 30 songs with session guitarist John Shanks, Richie was blindsided. "It shook me a little bit," he said. "I said, 'All right, what do you have?'" Trying to stay open-minded, Richie listened to the new material. But the songs didn't feel like Bon Jovi. They didn't feel like the band he had helped define. "It sounded like every song that I didn't want to write," he explained. It was a moment that made clear the growing distance between them, a realization that the musical connection he had once relied on was fraying. Not long after, Richie stepped away from the band, prioritizing his family and personal life. The next Bon Jovi album, Burning Bridges, leaned heavily on Shanks and producer Billy Falcon, With Richie receiving only one songwriting credit for Saturday Night Gave Me Sunday Morning, a track started before his exit. By 2016, This House Is Not For Sale became the first Bon Jovi album completely absent of a Sambora songwriting credit. Behind the music, Richie's departure was compounded by personal struggles. He often felt unsupported during challenging times, and the combination of professional sidelining and private pressures created a perfect storm. For decades, Richie and Jon had written the anthems of a generation together. Yet as the band evolved, so did the fractures in their relationship. But Jon and Richard's relationship was not the only one that became strained. His relationship with his ex-wife also suffered greatly. Romance and heartbreak, Richie Sambora and Heather Locklear's love story. From the moment Heather Locklear hit the small screen, people couldn't get enough of her. She had that magnetic presence that could breathe life into a struggling show and make it instantly addictive. Fans adored her on TV, and in real life, she was just as captivating. But love and fame don't always mix easily. In 1986, Locklear married Tommy Lee, the wild and notorious drummer of Mötley Crüe, and for almost 8 years, they seemed like the perfect rock and roll couple. But as fate would have it, that marriage ended, and soon after, Locklear found herself walking down the aisle again, this time with another rock superstar. Richie Sambora, Bon Jovi's lead guitarist, was at the top of his game, and the chemistry between him and Locklear was undeniable. They tied the knot in a simple New Jersey civil ceremony, but their love story didn't stop there. Overjoyed and head over heels, they flew to Paris to exchange vows again in a more romantic celebration. Their life together seemed like a real-life fairy tale. In 1997, nearly 3 years into their marriage, they welcomed their daughter, Ava Sambora, adding another layer of happiness to their life. Then, just over a decade later, the shock came. In 2006, Locklear filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. On paper, it sounded routine, even typical, but the reality was anything but. According to Richie Sambora, the announcement blindsided him completely. Speaking to ABC News Radio, he described the divorce filing as completely untrue at first, revealing that he had plans with Heather to celebrate Valentine's Day and had just spent the holidays at home with her. He was stunned, having even publicly denied any issues a couple of months prior, stating, "The real story is that there is no story. The truth is that after 11 years together, we are still happily married. Boring, but true." This left fans and observers with one burning question. Why did Heather Locklear divorce Richie Sambora? She never publicly explained her reasons, but reports hinted that it was messy. The situation became even more tabloid-worthy when Richie moved on quickly. Just 2 months after the filing, he was reportedly dating Denise Richards. The timing fueled speculation, especially because, according to In Touch Weekly, Richards, who was friends with Locklear, had allegedly encouraged Heather to file for divorce, only to later date Sambora herself. While neither Locklear, Sambora, nor Richards has confirmed this version of events, it remains the only publicly circulated explanation for the divorce. Years later, however, it became clear that whatever happened in the past, Richie and Heather had found a way to maintain respect and care for each other. Roughly 8 years after their split, Sambora told People magazine that he still loved Heather and believed she still loved him too. Time does heal old wounds. I mean, I still love Heather, and I know she loves me. She's the mother of my child, man. What can you say? Their relationship might have ended in marriage, but it never ended in family commitment. They have been seen together at countless events celebrating their daughter Ava, including when Ava walked the catwalk as a model. Richie has also proven to be fiercely supportive of Heather during her hardest moments. In 2018, when Locklear faced multiple arrests and struggles involving alcohol and medication, Sambora stepped in, hiring a team of specialists to help her through the crisis. Speaking to the Daily Mail, he made it clear that he would always be there for both Heather and Ava, expressing pride in his daughter's composure and strength. Thanks to that support, Heather has reportedly been sober for several years, with no further incidents involving law enforcement since 2018. Their story shows that even after heartbreak and scandal, love can take on a different, more mature form. Richie and Heather may no longer be husband and wife, but they remain co-parents and allies. The day Richie Sambora vanished. April 2013 hit Bon Jovi fans like a thunderclap. Midway through a world tour, the band announced that Richie Sambora would not be performing on the upcoming leg. Jon Bon Jovi released a statement, calling them personal issues, and promised that the shows would go on as scheduled. Fans immediately speculated, some assuming it might have been a relapse given Richie's past struggles with substance abuse. But TMZ dug a little deeper and painted a more complicated picture, reporting that the real friction was money. Yes, Jon and Richie were reportedly fighting over finances. At the same time, TMZ shared that Richie had made the decision to enter rehab. While he hadn't checked in immediately, sources said the plan was for him to get help shortly, possibly that very day. This wasn't new territory for Richie. He had been open about his battles with addiction, having checked into Cirque Lodge in Utah back in 2007 and again at UCLA Medical Center later that same year. In 2008, he pleaded no contest to a DUI in Laguna Beach, an incident that put his daughter in the car and led to probation, which he had just completed before this 2013 turmoil. Sources connected to the band told TMZ that the tension between Jon and Richie had been simmering for years, and it finally boiled over. It's a classic Jagger/Richards blow-up, one insider said, emphasizing the long-standing strain. Another part of the problem, the report added, was Jon allegedly belittling Richie, creating an environment filled with pressure and friction. Despite these tensions, Richie remained candid about the band's dynamics. In September 2013, he told The Hollywood Reporter, "Jon's the leader, and there are no bones about that, and no hard feelings. Everyone has a specific role in the caste system of what this band is, and that's why it has lasted for 30 years. The tension became visible on stage, too. During a concert in Calgary, Jon addressed the audience directly. "I had two choices, pack up and go home, or give you everything I got. Richie Sambora won't be performing for a while. If there's ever a night I need you, it's tonight, Calgary." Fans felt the void where Richie's guitar should have been. The next day, Richie reassured fans on social media, writing, "Thank you everyone for your concern. I'm well, but had to stay in LA to take care of a personal matter. Love you all and see you very soon." Soon after, he took some time to vacation with his daughter in Hawaii, proving that even amidst professional turbulence, family remained his anchor. After years of silence and speculation, Richie finally opened up, giving fans the chance to understand what was really going on behind the curtain. Richie Sambora finally breaks silence on Jon Bon Jovi. Fast forward, and Richie is finally breaking his silence in the Hulu documentary Thank You Goodnight, The Bon Jovi Story, which premiered April 26. The series gives fans an inside look at the legendary band members' lives today, especially addressing the burning questions surrounding Richie's sudden departure. The documentary features frontman Jon Bon Jovi, keyboardist David Bryan, drummer Tico Torres, and, of course, Richie Sambora. It explores untold stories, shedding light on the dynamics, struggles, and triumphs of a band that defined a generation. The flashbacks in Episode 1 take viewers back to the early 1980s when Jon was still assembling the band. According to Alec John Such, the founding bassist, Richie was introduced to Jon, and in 1983, he officially joined the band. A recreated interview with Dick Clark shows Jon recalling, "Richie was in the audience one night at a show when the four of us were playing, and he came up to me and said, 'I want to be your lead guitar player.'" Bon Jovi fondly remembers, Alec, who was also in an original band with Richie, said, "You have to see this guy. There's something about this guy." Sambora recalls the events leading to his audition. Alec had called me up and said, "I'm playing with this new band. You know, Bon Jovi and the Wild Ones. Come down and see the band." I said, "Yeah, sure." The chemistry was instant. Bon Jovi recalls, "After hearing Richie play and talking a bit, we found that we were really on the same track." Tico Torres adds a lighter perspective, teasing Richie for boldly declaring, "I'm your new guitar player," to which Richie admitted with a laugh that he was very cocky. The flashbacks capture the magic that formed almost immediately. Jon was impressed with Richie's talent, voice, and songwriting ability, noting, "I knew that this guy was incredibly talented. He could play, he could sing, he could write, and I thought he would be an incredible compliment." Torres also highlights their vocal synergy, explaining that Richie and Jon's voices together created a unique style, a sound that became instantly recognizable to fans around the world. But what really happened that led Richie to walk away? Episode 3 of the documentary begins to unpack this. Richie describes his departure as an amalgamation of issues, a mix of personal and professional challenges. Family life played a significant role. "I spent so much time being on the road, and at that time, unfortunately, my ex-wife Heather Locklear was having some mental health issues, and my daughter was coming to an age where she could understand," Richie explains. "She needed me, and I needed her, truthfully. We didn't have enough time." Being part of one of the world's biggest bands added another layer of strain. As the group prepared for the Because We Can tour in 2013, following the release of their 12th studio album, What About Now, tensions were mounting. Brian recalls the stress in the studio, noting that creative limitations and Richie's personal struggles were affecting the recording process. Producer and backup guitarist John Shanks often filled in for Richie on tracks, and songwriter Desmond Child remembers, "Richie would come to the studio and everything was done. For Richie, it was frustrating. He felt the band was growing stale and his role had shifted. Jon wanted it done well. He got in a strange mood about time," Richie explains. The situation reached a breaking point when Bon Jovi and Shanks wrote the album largely without him. One song in particular, The Fighter, highlighted the tension. Richie was upset he wasn't allowed to play a specific acoustic part. Shanks stepped in, and Richie later revealed, "I was crushed that I was replaced." He recalls being told implicitly that the band could move forward without him. John Shanks and Jon had 30 songs, and they said they felt like they had the record, and I said, "Let me hear it. Don't sound like Bon Jovi." It just didn't sound like us because I wasn't there. He had the whole thing kind of planned out, which basically was telling me, "I can do it without you." And I was getting treated kind of like I didn't write and do all that stuff. And I wasn't the guy they talked to anymore. Following his exit, Canadian guitarist Phil X was brought in temporarily, and in 2016, he became a permanent member. Despite the drama, there's no bad blood. Bon Jovi told People magazine in April that there's never animosity between them. Richie even came over to watch 3 parts of the docu-series at Jon's house. Their bond may have evolved, but it hasn't vanished. Reflecting on his departure in episode 4, Richie apologizes to fans and his bandmates. "I don't regret leaving the situation, but I regret how I did it. So I want to apologize fully right now to the fans, especially, and also to the guys, because my feet and my spirit were just not letting me walk out the door." Jon admits the void Richie left is still palpable. "The true magic of our live performance was when we sang together. And when we sang together, that was our unique spot. It was as identifiable as any great combination that made 1 and 1 3. And I don't think that's been replaced." Today, Richie looks back with pride. "Jon and I touched the planet with those songs. You realize that you were warriors that loved each other, watched each other's backs, and told each other the truth," he says. If anybody doesn't think that we were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Jimmy and Robert Plant, any way you want to slice it, come on! This documentary isn't just a retrospective, it's a window into the human side of rock stardom, showing how friendship, artistry, and life's challenges intersect in ways fans rarely see. Richie Sambora's story reminds us that even the biggest names face struggles, and sometimes stepping away is the hardest yet most necessary move. It's a story of talent, loyalty, and the enduring bond of a friendship that not even time or circumstance can completely sever. Fans finally get to understand what really went down, seeing Richie not just as the guitarist who left, but as a human being balancing family, personal struggles, and a lifelong love of music. Watching Thank You Goodnight feels like being invited backstage, seeing the highs and lows, the laughter and the tension, and understanding why the legacy of Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora is so unforgettable. Fans who have been left wondering if Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora could ever share a stage again are finally getting a glimpse of hope. Over a decade has passed since Richie abruptly left the band in 2013, choosing to prioritize family over the relentless grind of world tours and studio sessions. His departure was sudden, leaving a void in both the band's lineup and the hearts of fans worldwide. Phil X stepped in as his replacement and has been carrying the torch ever since, but there has always been that lingering question: could Richie return? And would Jon Bon Jovi want him back? Could Jon Bon Jovi reunite? Richie recently offered a candid and revealing answer during an appearance on the Allison Hagendorf show. The guitarist didn't shy away from the topic, confirming that he would absolutely be open to returning if Jon's health allows him to tour again. "The fans would just love it," Richie said. "It's not finance standing in the way. It has nothing to do with that. The world could use it." His words were heartfelt, emphasizing that this isn't about money or ego, but about reconnecting with a bandmate and friend and reigniting the magic that made Bon Jovi a household name. Of course, there's a catch. Jon Bon Jovi underwent a delicate procedure in 2022 to address loose vocal cords that had been affecting his singing ability for some time. Richie spoke openly about the seriousness of the surgery and the grueling recovery process Jon is going through. He's been having problems with his voice, and now he had that operation with some plastic thing in his larynx. It's an iffy thing at best. I don't know if there's anybody that has ever had that be successful. I'm not really sure about that, Richie explained, giving fans a sense of just how precarious the situation is. Richie didn't just comment from afar. He's been involved in supporting Jon's recovery. He revealed that he visited Bon Jovi post-operation and even discussed the rehabilitation process in detail. "Physiologically, it doesn't seem almost possible," Richie admitted. "Your brain has to teach this plastic thing how to work, almost like you've got to relearn speech in a way." The level of dedication and understanding Richie has shown underscores just how deep their bond runs, despite years of separation and past tensions. Yet even amid the uncertainty, Richie's willingness to return shines through. "I would definitely go," he said without hesitation. "If he gets his voice back, I'll go play." His statement isn't just a promise, it's a reminder of the incredible chemistry he and Jon shared for decades. A partnership that produced some of rock's most iconic anthems. For fans, this is tantalizing news. The possibility of seeing Richie Sambora on stage again, sharing the spotlight with Jon Bon Jovi, could bring a full-circle moment that few thought possible. Richie's openness also shows a deeper truth about their relationship. Time, distance, and personal challenges have changed the landscape, but they haven't erased the respect, love, and creative synergy that once made them unstoppable. If Jon's voice recovers fully, the stage could once again belong to the duo, proving that even in rock and roll, the right timing can rekindle a legendary partnership. The thought alone sparks excitement. The soaring guitars, the iconic harmonies, and the energy of two longtime collaborators reunited. It's a moment fans have dreamed of, a chance to witness history in motion. Richie Sambora's words leave no doubt. He's ready, willing, and more than eager to step back into the spotlight with his bandmate. All that remains is the question of timing, Jon's recovery, and the possibility of that long-awaited reunion. If you're a fan of Bon Jovi or Richie Sambora, the idea of this reunion isn't just wishful thinking, it's a real, tangible possibility. And when it happens, it won't just be a return to the stage, it will be a celebration of music, friendship, and the enduring bond between two legends who still have so much to give. Fans everywhere are left holding their breath, imagining the moment Richie and Jon hit the stage together again. Guitars blazing and voices soaring, a reminder that some partnerships are simply too powerful to be left behind. Do you think there's a possibility the gang will reunite? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.